We are so lucky that Kadija Sesay George, is able to be with us today. She is from the United Kingdom, so she's here with us from Britain and is currently a Fulbright at Howard. Is it Howard? Okay, Howard University. There's a whole actual bio on here that I am going to read. She is the author of a single book, but I want to also just say that what's really cool, and I'm so bad about staying on script, y'all, but what's really cool about her work is not only her own poetry, she is a poet, but really more importantly, she's a curator of poets and of poetry. Again, our missions are so in a line. She describes herself as a literary activist, a term that I just love. She gathers and shepherds poetry from Black folks in the UK, across diaspora, and makes that work available, which is such labor. So thank you for your work. And so necessary, right? Because, as a poet, I can tell you it's all fun and games to write your poem, but if no one is publishing it, if no one is reading it, then it's not fulfilling its potential, right? So folks like Kadija are necessary. Kadija is an independent scholar working in literary project management and creative professional development. She's the author of the collection Irki, which was published in 2013 on my press, hey pressmate, and People Tree. And she recently launched the International Black Speculative Writing Festival and Afro Poetry, which is a selective interactive app video. In 2026, Dialogue Books will publish Black Radical, The Political Poetry of Black Britain, which Kadija edited with the late Professor Benjamin Zephaniah. Kadija is currently a Fulbright Scholar in Residence at Howard University and curated, I forgot that part. She curated Fierce Flowers' current broadside exhibit. What is a broadside exhibit, you ask? Over at Fierce Flower, we collect broadsides, which are, in the crudest terms possible, poetry posters. We have about 240 of them right now, and we invite folks from the community. We've had student curators, we've had deans, we've had a chauffeur, and we've had Kadija come in, go through, select a few, and kind of tell the story of why they picked those, and we exhibit them for all the time, but we have receptions on First Friday, so also feel free to come check us out at Cardinal House right now to see the exhibit that Kadija pulled together. We are so delighted to have her, to hear her work, new work maybe, we'll see. Oh, she said new work. She said she was going to get new work. I was like, girl, you do you. And so we will hear some wonderful poetry. I encourage you to ask questions, to let the experience wash. If you always feel like, folks, are y'all poets who came or new today? Are you familiar with poetry? Got some familiarity, feeling good about poems? Poetry, I always say, is an experience. So I thank you, congratulations for being at this experience. I hope it's a good one. Allow it to happen. And let's welcome, in a very Fierce Flowers, JMU Harrisonburg way, Kadija.
Ooh, nice. Just going to set myself up a little bit so I know how long I'm reading for. Because even though they kind of said to me, oh, you can go over a little bit, I'm one of these people who, when I host, I'm going like this to people. So I have to do it to myself. So, yeah, it's such an honor to be here. And so thank you so much. Ooh, yes. Yes, it's such an honor to be here. Thank you so much for asking. So yeah, my book, Irki, it means home in the Nubian language. I went to Egypt I had a residency in Egypt, which was wonderful. And I just wanted to see, wherever I go, I was like, where are the Black people here? I've got to go and find them. So you have to kind of go to certain areas and certain islands of saying where, where different people are residing, and sort of the Nubian people were on a particular island, so I went there to meet them. So on the cover of my book, that was my a photo I took in Egypt, and this is the father of Nubian culture. But very often with elders, they don't like you to take photos of them because they believe it captures their soul. So he took me on a walkabout, and then I had to kind of go from behind. I had to do it from behind, so I still had him captured, but not from the front, so that he wouldn't feel offended about that. So, yeah. So, Urki is a collection. I like to call it a migration story, because I'm from Sierra Leone, but I was born in the UK. My parents travelled from Sierra Leone to the UK, so there's lots of stories that come about from that. So you'll be hearing a bit of a migration story, but I'll also read poems that I've written in terms of other anthologies and forthcoming book and everything. So, but one of the things that helped me to put this together when I was thinking about it was the fact that diaspora children, quite a lot, do not know their grandparents. And I'd be often going through all these different readings and people talk, this one is for my grandmother, this is about my grandmother. And I had to think, if I was going to write a poem about my grandmother, what would I write? I hardly know them. So I had to almost rethink the stories of my grandmothers. So I've woven them into the migration story, but also there are some of the poems that are like, this is what my grandmother might have said, might have thought, etc., and just what they would have been like. And half my family is Muslim, half of them are Christian, so that also comes into it. So I'm going to read a few of those grandmother poems, since grandmothers inspired me to write them. So here's some of the poems in their absence. So just in terms of thinking migration story, the first couple of poems, and I'll try and write it from both of their perspectives. So the first poem, and in fact the first section, is called Letting Go. So here we start with Letting Go 1. This man is the one you say will take care of you, feed you, clothe you, shelter you, respect you, will not damage you, and be a good father to your children? Inshallah. Okay then, if you say so, I will let you go. Letting Go 2. He's on the plane going. I can't stop him. Let him go. Maybe he will be better off. Maybe make some money. Send me £1 But I don't know, about this girl he is marrying from up country. She's not Methodist. Her family's not even Christian. But she did go to a missionary school. How does he know her? I tried hard to meet her family. I know nothing of her history. With Creotity, I know say he go pray to me same God. Muslim man them? I'm not so sure. Then say Allah na the same. So who's one me grandpicking go pray to? Grandmothers. This one is just generally about grandmothers, about a description kind of my grandmothers. One chose to lie flat on her narrow wooden bed, declared, I won't be getting up anymore. One tried to lie quietly in her castle through the terror of a civil war. Grandmother Church, Grandmother Mosque gave up their children to the empire. One to lie flat on a wooden park bench in London's Turnham Green. One to lie on a mattress to yield babies in exchange for love and dreams. This one is called Shoots. So even though there were a series, I kind of scattered them throughout the book as part of the story. So this poem is called Shoots. Sapling legs bend smoothly, power foot in place, her back parallel to solid ground, makes her torso a table of support. Es Yusef Nami back. I get for carry you me picking. I'm unconvinced. My thick calves dangle, heavy breasts squashed against the shoulders of her 5'1.5" frame. Her thinned breasts, ridged, matured, hang like sappos from a tree as they droop, dried. Forward-leaning, her torso supports my legs for less than 1 minute, me afraid that our bonding may break her. But her drive leg is ready to spring back, as I slide off. Now knowing it is Granny's legs, each time I'm ready to take off when I'm on my marks, to get ready, get set, and go. Welcome to England. One day, she's coming. The next, she's here. So far away for so long, bringing her to us across the Atlantic. I went to visit her at my parents' house to kiss her hands, welcome her to England. She smiled, a vague recognition, with her tiny brown-toothed smile. I carried her on my back to sitting room warmth, the situation now in reverse. Grandmothers too. Small as my hand, her face holds grey, brown pebble eyes. Lips small, round and brown, like a lychee seed. Wrapped in blankets, earmuffs, leg warmers, knitted hat, crimpling trousers with sewn-in pleats, brownie beige from M&S like her daughter wore. She talked much, but we didn't understand Mende, and her chatter was a cry to go home. She spoke little, waiting only to chew her pepper, and her stick to keep her teeth strong. Wrapped in overripe mangoes, rotten plantain, burnt crow, rich red palm oil that colours the meeting of teeth, the scent of a well-worn, difficult life. Narrow as my hand, her face holds eyes that dart, switch side to side, day and night, like the geckos that scratch her roof. So I just read one more of the grandmother poems. Queen of Old Wolf, for my grandmother Adama. From her chair that rocks on the veranda, she surveys her empire. In her chair she rocks, squelches tidbits of rice and fish into a ball in her right palm, rolls it to the tip of 2 fingers and broad thumb, flattened by years of threading hair, pushes them one by one onto the waiting tongues of her army of toddlers. Once she is sure that all are fed and they run off to play in dirt and sun, she rinses her hands, prays, naps, wakes to the gentle lapse of life, waits for the envelope her son must bring each month from her daughter in England, to keep her in the last days of her reign, to keep her in rice and pepper fish balls. Yet this son of her land arrives with no blue-inked white envelope, but with black gun, peppering bullets into the 4-year-old with hand in hers. Puppy fat falls away from soft, wrinkled wisdom. Grandma can't hold of boys who come with stones and bullets, instead of homemade nets, fish hooks, curved spokes of abandoned bikes. Boys who run fast, fast to keep Grandma safe, who run from where they swim, shot in their footsteps. Green-skinned orange trees, pale pink bell apples, sugar-laden grapefruit, sheltered Grandma's 2-bed corrugated store-roofed house with personal borehole and latrine, secluded in the valid curve, away from the daily life of oil-fuming cars, hailing conductors that barrage her nostrils and ears. Why do men at war fear the poor, convinced that enemies hide in their homes, forcing women to torch their men and ordering boys to kill their grandmas, laughing as they hide scared until they can flee into refugee zones? This is kind of like a little story of what happens sometimes in Sierra Leone, of what happened in terms of when there was a war. So from this next section, I'm going to read from a few poems called This House is an African House. Because I wasn't necessarily brought up with my parents, so I was brought up with foster parents, me and my brother and my sister. And then we had to move to London and lived in London. And so it's a totally different experience. Living with working class English people and then living with your African parents, very different. But anyway, so we were told when we moved, this house is an African house. Okay. This house is an African house. This your body is an African woman's body. This your vagina is an African woman's vagina. And all three you keep clean, you hear? Otherwise, I will wash you out with bleach, scrub between your legs with a scoring pad, then I will take your body and clean the whole house with it. At 11 years old, I didn't want a woman's body. I was sure my friends didn't have vaginas, and I wanted to be just like them, and they weren't from Africa either. Cutting. Brings back memories, right? Cutting. Your grandmother was cut. Your mother was cut. Your older sister was cut. Born in UK, raised in UK, schooled in UK. No passing through puberty, no transition, no bundu to take charge of you. If you want the respect, if you want the wealth, if you want to save the honor of your mother, we must take these blades and cut. Yes, first we throw you open to expose your soft insides. Tender now, slit to make you more tender later, knot you up like tie-dye, unravel you slowly once the color has set. Because until you bleed, you're not a woman. This one is called Towel Dressing. And when I was writing this book, I made a very distinct thing in my head saying, I'm not going to write any poems about hair. Because black women hair is such a major thing. It's such a major culture. It's so much a part of our life. So I'm not writing any poems about hair. Then when I finished, I'd written about 5 poems about hair. Just because it just comes into everything. So this one is called Towel Tresses. My dream was to wrap my hair in a towel, twist it turban-like, and after washing, fling it so that my long tresses would drip down my back. I put my hands in my hair and tugged it to stretch it out, but I still couldn't see it out of the corner of my eye. So what kind of girl was I? So, named for her. Sheer, black, laddered, woven tight into cornrows, ear to ear, forehead to nape, sectioned like a hot cross bun, parted to show a caramelled brown surface where the sun works with hair grease to moisten the curly edges that shape her forehead, brightening her face from matte to slightly shiny. That's my mum's face you have there. I grinned and silently thanked Granny for being beautiful. So I'm going to read a few poems that are not in the book, and then I'm going to read a few more from there because I want to end it in a certain way. So I think I'm going to read Out of Reach. Several times I sensed the space until the quiet commotion of your coming was heralded by the heaviness of your form. The coolness from the air conditioning blocked by the heat from your body, engulfed by the smoky, sweated smell embedded in your shirt. It was late. You said 3. It wasn't the cocks crowing that gave you away. It was the silvery sing-song wail of the call to prayer. My mind turned my body over, out of your reach. 6 minutes writing. A lot of people who write kind of know that this happens, that you spend the whole day writing, but really it's just 6 minutes. The first day was the longest, the day after you left. I spent 6 hours sleeping, 6 hours reading, 6 hours eating, 6 hours sitting, 6 minutes writing. Fighting every inclination in me to convince the holiday company that I was too ill to stay away from you. I wasn't homesick, just you sick, which annoyed me. Until today, I didn't believe that it's not where you are, but who you're with that makes the difference between being content and being happy. I have this big theory thing about happy. I don't believe in being happy. I believe in being content. I think if we aim towards being content, that should make us happy. Don't aim in being happy. Because sometimes it's a bit disappointing, but just aim in being content. Reality of being dazed. Woke up slightly dazed this morning, smell of Africa in my nose, taste of Africa on my tongue. As birds sang, convinced myself I heard cocks crow. 6 a.m., time for prayers. Windows slightly open as the smell of heat rising from red-brown earth wafted itself in, bringing with it sour aftertaste of fresh bread baked in an open charcoal oven. Threw off the thin beige blanket, headed for bathroom, waddled back, looked at you lying there in your life is sweet state. Remember, it wasn't happy, just life is sweet state. But that moment told me, 10 years from now, I really would be waking up in Africa. And you would remain content in your Brooklyn bedsit. I don't know why Brooklyn. I think maybe I was going out with somebody in Brooklyn at the time. I can't remember. So sometimes I change it. I can't listen to John Legend anymore is the next poem. I wrote this because I love John Legend, so I had to write a poem with John Legend in it. I can't listen to John Legend anymore. Not with this divorce between us, because his words became yours, needled through my muscles. His vibrating tones that made me tingle became your sneers and screeches until my ears exploded. And all I wanted was to sing loud. We're just ordinary people, but couldn't because we tried so hard not to be. Special, lucky, blessed applied to us. But we just made a bloody mess of it all. I love John Legend, but I don't listen to him anymore. His explosion of sweet sound always made me want to raise my hands, fold him into my chest, but his sound now has become more like a stroke, with a slow burn through my head that makes me shake, tremble, pour out my heartache until my ribs bruise, my head blow up into a balloon as you were so loud, so very loud, that you couldn't hear my song, my shout, my scream, until the only release was to pierce myself, acupuncture-like, to exercise tainted energy. And then I punctured you with, I don't love you anymore. I had to hurt you to release me, and now you can listen to him with someone else. But I won't listen to John Legend anymore, not with this divorce between us, because we shared Legend in a way that each syllable of his name, each of his songs, each track on his album pronounced how we could so love and unlove. Yet your disdain of reggae meant you refused to dance with me the night before our wedding on the beach with our friends in the Gambia. I can't listen to Masakela either. And when it comes to Supremo, Gil Scott-Heron, it's difficult for me when I hear his Pieces of a Man. Although now I can listen to the Crown Prince of Lovers Rock, and I can play Salif again, Keita, who brought the kind of smile to my face that you said locked you out. Yet you could not know that Hathaway, alone one Christmas, had already done that. 3 years later, with less than what I came to you with, I still fight to keep my songs and my sanity by hitting my playlist over and over and over, except for Legend. He's not on there. Not for now, anyway. Remember how much time I have now. Do I have a little bit more time? Yes, I do. Okay. So, that one. I'm going to read, A Weekend in Manhattan. I'm going to read another one about Africa. Okay. A Weekend in Manhattan changed us forever. I wanted to browse in Tribeca bookshops, drink decaf soy latte with cinnamon, but you wanted to window shop in Fifth Avenue for things that neither of us could afford. I said, let's visit African Burial Ground and the Schomburg Center. You pleaded to drive around Central Park in a horse and buggy. I suggested eating at Sylvia's in Harlem. You insisted on eating in Whole Foods on Union Square. Then that call came from home. Your mother had died, and all the disparity from before was gone. I put my arms around you. I saw you cry for the first time. I gave you all the tissues I had. Still not enough. We squeezed hands till we landed back on London tarmac. This poem is just totally out there. As I said, I spent time in Egypt writing this, putting together the book. And Egypt is such an amazing place. So this poem comes from another space that I visited. I think I went to Aswan. So this poem is called Architecture for the Poor. In nature, no two men are alike. Even if they are identical twins, they will differ in their dreams. The architecture of a house emerges from such dreams. No two houses are identical. Hassan Fatih built dreams, each abode its own identity, each village an open-air theatre to perform Shakespeare in the globe. An actor's dream, the scribe at work, in the land of the original scribes. Plays in translation, new ones about transition, poetry recitals in the round. Sound retained within these walls resonates without mics. Architecture for the poor. Fatih, in his dissidence, created a stately minaret to view the Menon at night. Nubian-style domes and roofs give passing cooling in the summer and warmth in the winter. Reinforced concrete and steel have no home here, designed for beauty, built with mud. Hassan and Imhotep were brothers, building cities of the future for an Africa not ready for them yet. In strategic disinvestment, when art is lost, dreams are lost, seeding unrest in bellies. So I'm going to read a few of these poems from the migration story, just to end. So this is called Ode to SS Accra, because there's a lot of the migration story in Britain from the Second World War. It gets tagged with what is called the Windrush generation, because a lot of people came over from the Caribbean from like the late 50s to the mid-70s. They called that the Windrush generation because those people were invited from the Caribbean to help Britain rebuild after the Second World War. So a lot of them went to work for the National Health Service, and a lot of them went to work on the public transportation system. So, and the ship that some of them came over was called the Windrush, so they were called the Windrush generation. But in calling the Windrush generation, they went and left out a significant number of people from West Africa who actually went at the same time. But they weren't, some of them were specifically invited, but they went at the same time, but they arrived in different ports. They arrived in the ports of Liverpool instead of in Kent. So they're not talked about so much. And then people get surprised that, oh, okay, this Windrush generation actually includes a lot of African people, but it's not actually called a generation. And even the African people don't even understand themselves what the difference is. A lot of people don't know what the difference is. So this one is called Ode to SS Accra. I wanted to stamp it that we came over on other ships. Accra, Apapa and Oriole, Vessels built for Liverpool, a fleet of Elder Dempster ships, signatures of West African trips. Passenger grips packed with dreams began to unravel slowly in reams. Hopes filtered through fingers like sand, blown away with memories of homeland. Minds changed with the English weather, but return tickets were never an option. Headlines, Wogs here to stay, so maybe they would return home one day. No plans to return. So I'm going to read two. I'm reading no plans to return, and then I read back in the day. So imagine you came over, landed in Britain, very unsure of everything, and then you think about near the end of your time there, are you going to return? Some people do return, but a lot don't. Many do not. No plans to return. They came with photos, he said, of an England we had never seen. Sun in Hyde Park. They told us they would help with a place to live, a job. If I went, I could look after my mum, my sister with crook leg who never married. Now, our children are here, are trapped. No jobs, no homes, no way out. We are old now, going soon. We thought we had built a foundation for them during Thatcher's rule, but they're not benefiting and told to go back home, just as we were over 50 years ago, just as we were. You lied to my papa, she said. You told him that everything will be fine. We would have a dry place to live, a kitchen for me to cook, a bed to sleep in. This country is lonely when you not get Fambonaya. Me, I'm ready to return home, where things are not perfect, but where it is warm, people are friendly, and my skin is not a sin. We don't talk about these times, he said. They've passed. We came to better our lives, better ourselves, take care of family back home, the never-ending family that swells with each monthly check. This has become a tiresome life. Nothing is moving. No one is progressing. So I've decided that when I'm ready, what I'm going to do is say to my wife, I don't want to live anymore, and we'll lie on our bed, hold hands, and drift away. My one wish is that we go together. I brought her here, and she should leave with me. Maybe it's time to let go. We have no plans to return. No plans to return home, and we are old now, used to this way of life. My eyes are failing me. I can still see fine, but if it gets worse, I don't trust their WHO medicine. If my wife gets sick, where do I get help? To take her to hospital. If her other hip goes, I can't lift her alone. Maybe when they get electric, we'll reconsider. When I left, everything ran perfectly. Now, neither gas nor petrol, no clean water, no rice. I hear gooey light. It's as if colonialism was our saviour, political independence, our assassin, economic independence, Satan. Were Africans not the first people on this earth? Yet look at us now. We live as though we'll be the first to go. Have we no pride left? We gave the British PM our highest honour, paramount chief, but his embarrassment was our shame, because he refused our boggle-on robes. The world saw it all. We have not moved on. We've thrown ourselves back into captivity, never left mental slavery. We've no plans to return. I am going to, as my publisher said, you end the book on an up note, so I'm going to leave on two up notes. As I mentioned, I won't go into it too much, but it is like when I was younger, me and my brother and sister, we lived with, we had foster parents. We lived with English foster parents. So we had very typical, so we were brought up on very typical English food and very typical African food, depending on which parents we would live. And we would see my mum and dad, my real mum and dad, every couple of weeks. But in between, we had an English mother who, she cooked the most amazing English food. So I'm just going to read that poem because one of my favourite things up until now, I love things with apple, right? Apple pie, apple crumble, apple dumpling. And so this poem is a little bit about my love of apple. Sunday school, Sunday roast. Sunday school, where we learned about Mary, Joseph, and baby Jesus. At birth, he already had a title. Sunday roast. My mouth juiced up with saliva at the imagined smell of Mum's dinner on the table. Never chicken, that was midweek. Would it be slices of well-done beef with Yorkshire pud? Or pork with chewy crackling? Meat juice made roast potatoes golden. I dreamed of them as I sang out of tune. Lamb with mint sauce. Sing Hosanna, sing roast dinner to the King of Peace. Sing Hosanna, sing roast dinner to mushy peas. Give me joy in my heart, give me dumpling. Give me joy in my heart, I pray. Give me joy on my plate, keep me thirsting. Keep me gasping for apple dumpling all day. Lucky us. After guitar, sing-alongs and Bible stories, we didn't have far to run. Our house was opposite the church. Apple dumpling, my fave, hot and gooey. I shoved a big scoop into my mouth, apple side up, then couldn't pull the spoon out. Hard choice, burnt mouth or a belly full of apple dumpling without custard. The smell went behind my roof and out my nose. I prayed hard for God to release me from this pain. And he did speak to me that Sunday. Release the apple dumpling. It was obvious to me then that God had never tasted apple dumpling. And I never believed in Sunday school in quite the same way after that. Now I'm going to end on a poem called Back in the Day. And I did all have it nicely lined up, and then you just forget where you are. Oh, where's my Back in the Day gone? Go. No, that's not the same page. Here we go, back in the day. So it goes a little bit back to the migration thing, but I like to end on this poem. Back in the day. Singers in the 60s sold thin plastic round plates of black gold. Country, gospel, ska, soul, Jim Reeves, Ray Charles, Desmond Dekker, Sam Cooke, young Afro-Caribbeans shimmered, twisted ankles, swiped soles of feet, spun waists, stepped to ska, and swayed to skeeter, singing each note clear across the ocean they'd left. And maybe one day their dreams would come true. You can get it if you really want. You can get it if you really want. You can get it if you really want, but you must try, try and try, try and try. You'll succeed at last. Do 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 do. Whoa 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 whoa. Thank you.
Let's give it up one more time for Kadija. Yes. So at this time, we are going to begin our Q&A for just a moment. So, think about your questions. I will leave you in silence for a little bit. But yes, please raise your hand. Don't hesitate. Yes, over there. I would love you to talk about writing. I was at an event yesterday where they talked about memory and what it means, because you said there's some of it was you didn't know, so there's a little bit of invention, there's a little bit of imagination, and there's a little bit of memory. So I want you to talk about writing from that space and what's that like for you? How do you deal with not knowing but also being compelled to write about something that you don't actually know about, or that you have to rely on other people's memories to write about?
Yeah, it's well, I was thinking today when I'm thinking about.
Repeat the question.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, the question is about memory. And memory, and this is also like memory of what from like people, some like parents' memories, and they don't always want to share their memories. There were small bits of memories that you have, so I'd have to kind of think about a little bit, not only what I knew about my grandmothers, but what we had to do. So like my dad when we were kids. You would say, you have to write to your grandmother every 2 weeks. My father's very specific. You write to your grandmother every 2 weeks. And at the time, you would write so that it would be light enough to post. You had these blue, called airmail envelopes. So it's these thin blue pieces of paper folded into 3. So there were 3 sections. So there were 3 siblings. So we each had a section where we had to write to my grandmother that we had never met. But we had to write and tell her, dear grandmother, how are you? This is what I did today. Just so she would have something in terms of her children. And so I'd have to recall all of that kind of memory. And we'll call that memory of those blue airmail envelopes that, of course, don't exist anymore. But even apart from memory like that, and of course I call on my brother and my sister, and we all remember different things as well. My brother remembers something, I remember something, my sister doesn't always remember so much because she was, because she doesn't remember so much. She's a few years younger, but sometimes I'll talk about something and say, I don't remember that. And my brother, for some reason, he started going onto TikTok and sending me all these songs and all of these really weird pop songs of the time and things like, and the programs used to watch, do you remember this? Do you remember that? And that also sparks things. And some of the weirdest pop things. So my parents were very strict, and the only things we were allowed to watch on TV, and we only had 3 channels at the time. When we got 4 channels, that was really exciting. We had 3 channels at the time, but we were allowed to watch the news, and we were allowed to watch Top of the Pops. So Top of the Pops is like the music program, the top 10 hits would all be done on stage, and sometimes we'd have, now there are videos, but of course, they were called film, but they were called videos, and we were allowed to watch that. That's what we were allowed to watch. So it would be sometimes the weirdest pop groups on there, because they would be better on stage. So my brother sent me one, and my voice is terrible, but I'm just going to tell you this little one. There's one song called, it's something about John or something like that. But he sent me this one and said, I was going out with the girl, her name was Julie, and one night she came to me while we were watching telly. Duh, 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 duh. And I said, the weird thing is, I remembered all the words to that song. And I said, don't send me things like anymore, because it's bringing up the weirdest memories. But I remember that, and that was part of our childhood, And you would have these song sheets almost, where they were like in little books, and you'd go and buy one of those from the newsagent, and it'd have all the song lyrics in it. So you'd go around at school and you'd be singing the lyrics from all these weird songs. So things like that you kind of remember. You think, how do you put it into poetry? But then, as well, when I was reading things today, the poem about a weekend in Manhattan, I remember that so clearly. My friend doesn't. And so at some stage, I sent this poem to my friend, and she goes, yeah, okay. And I remember this happening. She hardly remembers it at all. So you also remember things differently, very differently. And as well, for years when I was a kid, I remembered the number of my house that we lived in when we were outside of London. And in my head, it was always 99. The number on the door was 99. When I went there about 20, 30 years later, it wasn't 99. But I thought, but the house was correct, but it wasn't 99. I think it was like 191 or something like that. So it's what you remember and how you remember it. We think our memories are sometimes really solid, but we're not. And that's why, as well, I'm kind of doing some research now that I'm calling public collective memory interviews, so that people can come together. We're talking about magazines and what happened and about cultural things. So when you do get people all in the room talking, you do remember things. Some things are remembered definitely, but then the story starts coming back together better. And then you start getting the true story, and people's names you start to remember. Foolish songs you start remembering. So memory can play tricks on you. And sometimes we're so sure, and sometimes it doesn't happen like that. So I know I'm kind of shedding terrible light on history now. Should we remember things like history? But it's interesting how it interweaves. And so when I see people's as well memoirs and they've got lots of dialogue in it, I'm thinking, how much of that was true? It can't be, really. But some of it is what the kind of the story around what happened and the kind of dialogue that would have come out from it. And I think we've got to be honest about that. Yeah.
Well, and that dialogue is true. It's the mythic truth. It's one,
Yes.
It's the mythic
Yes.
truth.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
one, because I'm going through this now. You know, it's really hard to do a memoir and not put words in people's mouths that might not have happened.
Yeah.
But you have to stay to the deeper truth of something.
Yes. Yeah.
And I wanted to ask you, the music is obviously really important to you. It appears in your poetry. This playlist that you have in your head, it seems to be mostly influenced by American music and not British music. But during the last quarter of the 20th century, it was the music of the Beatles that we still, you know, put up on an altar. What about that? Was the music mostly American pop music, or was it something else?
I think it depends on, you know, the different communities you come from. But American culture is so influential in so many places, and definitely in places like the UK, which is why so many of our singers would have an American accent, because they think that that's the only way they're going to get a deal. And that's the only way we're going to listen, is if we sound like the people who are already successful, and those are American. But now that, I'd say, you know, more recently, a lot of the singers, they stick to their own tone and their own accent. So you will hear them singing. And typically, and a lot sometimes in English, so they don't finish their sentences. So when we were kids, you know, there's no way we're going to go home and say, what? You say what? You know, otherwise, you know, you're not going to get anything to eat the next morning or something. We had to put the T's on the end of our words. That's how our parents were taught. They were taught the Queen's English. What they didn't realise when they went to England is that they were talking better English than English people. They had no idea. And so when we were coming home not speaking proper English, that kind of drove them a little bit nuts. But it's the same with the music, and the same with all the influences. That's why this is an African house section was really important, because they wanted to keep their African culture in the house, because then they could start telling all these other cultures were going to come in that they couldn't take control of. And then, of course, you know, it was not only American in the UK, it was in the 70s, it was all the influence from Jamaica and reggae music. And Rastafarianism, and there's no way we're taking that into the house. As we were younger, when we were kids. Parents go, no, so it's like, where did all of this influence come on? But now there's a lot of Jamaican influence in West Africa. You know, Gambians love reggae music. So you'll have people in Jamaica who are Muslim and Rastafarian. I'm trying to go and do some research about that. But I've been told it's because Islam is for the, Rastafarianism is for the here and now. Islam is for the hereafter. That's how it was described to me, succinctly like that. But I thought to myself, there's a lot of research needs to come out of that. And they will display kind of like an image of Bob Marley next to their spiritual leader. For them, it's equally important for a lot of people. Yeah. So, yeah, I think it depends where all those influences come. And we had so much, and it still happens. But at least like now, it's more world. It's more international. But yeah, so it was very, very deep.
Yes.
Yeah.
Were you ever afraid to share your poems?
Oh gosh, yes. I probably.
And what did you do?
Sorry. Was I ever afraid to share my poems? I think in some ways I was lucky. I started writing quite young, so I was rejected quite young. You get over that. But then I went to a workshop with and it was with Derek Walcott. No, it wasn't Derek Walcott. Yes, it was Derek Walcott. And somebody asked a similar question about their poetry and sharing it. And he just looked at him and said, "Well, if you don't send it out there, if you don't share it, how are you supposed to know if it's any good?" And he was like, of course you share it. So you really got to just take the plunge and share it. When I was 16, I did win a poetry competition, even though it was within a small group, so that gave me confidence. And I knew somebody who had a magazine who also published my poem. So that kind of makes you feel like, it is possible. So in some ways, I wasn't scared. I just kind of think, well, I just write something else. So there are lots of poems I wrote a long time ago that I absolutely love that I'll probably never see the light of day because I'm not 100% confident with them. But that's okay. It just means to say then I have to write more that I am happy to share, and I think you have to kind of do that, really. And I think it's natural to be worried about, because when you're writing, it's so heartfelt. Do you want to expose that? And if it just happens, if you expose it and somebody doesn't like it, how are you going to feel? It is a scary feeling because it comes from you, a heartfelt thing. I think it's okay to be scared, but you just have to take the plunge. It's a bit like networking. You just have to take the plunge and do it and say, if I don't do it, then what am I doing this for? I've got to share it. Yeah.
I'm just curious about your creative process when it comes to writing poems. How is it different for you now writing poems than when you first started in terms of creative process?
And I've been hearing this word a lot over the past few days about creative process. What's my creative process? I don't know if I actually have one. It's like what sparks me to write a poem. And a lot of the time maybe it's a feeling. Sometimes it's a phrase. If I hear a phrase, it maybe sparks something. I don't write as much poetry as I like. I must say that because I work a lot with other writers, which I thoroughly enjoy and don't want to give up for anything. So I slowed down on my own, probably on my own process and what I do. But in terms of it, so like one poem I wrote, like for my sister, there was this string of pubs in Britain, and the brand name of them was The Moon Underwater. I thought, what a waste of a name for a pub. It needs to be in a poem, The Moon Underwater. So I wrote a poem, and I wanted to write something for my sister because my sister's so close to my heart, and she's such a support for me. So I thought, imagine the moon underwater. When you see the moon underwater, the reflection of it is so amazing, it's so beautiful. So I wrote a poem called The Moon Underwater and the essence of the moon underwater for my sister. So it's things like that that might spark me. I'm not one of these people who, and I try to do it now that I'm with a writing group, do a lot of free writing and see what comes out of that. But sometimes I will just go with the flow and what's in my head, really, and think, well, what form is this best going to suit? And one poem can take me years. I will keep changing it. I love haiku. I write a lot of haikus, for example. And but yeah, I like to kind of play around with different form. And because I do edit a lot, I might write something and then I'll start stripping it of words that don't need to be there because I feel that every line in itself should be able to speak for itself. And I'm really into narrative, and I will finish it and think, what is this poem saying? What story is it telling? If it's not telling a story, I need it to tell a story of some sort, even if it's a haiku, And I like layers in things, and I'm thinking, okay, so where's the layers in this? If people are reading it again, what are they going to discover with reading this poem? So that's kind of part of my process, really. Yeah, and I just like listening to people and seeing, Sometimes people will just say the amazing things and they don't realise they're saying amazing things. I'm like, And sometimes if it's that amazing, I will say, I am going to steal that phrase you just said. So if you thought you were going to write something about it, I'm writing something about it. I'm just warning you. So yeah. Chimamanda did that to me. Chimamanda, it goes, Adichie, we were all in Kenya for this discussion about magazines because we were trying to build on magazines. And she was just looking at me intently. Going, Chimamanda, what's going on? She's going, you never know where your next story is going to come from. And I thought to myself, what did I just say? What's she going to take from this? But I learned from her, well, you never know where your next story is going to come from, So you have to be a good listener as well. You have to observe things really well, smell things really well. And because I like to have, kind of read the different senses in a poem as well. That's what I like to hear in terms of different smells. And you can tell I've got this thing about food and things like that. I think all of those kind of things are important and useful. Yeah.
Yeah, there was someone back there.
How do you manage moving between different cultures and growing up?
So the question was about different cultures.
And it's like, I grew up, my parents are Senegalese, I'm American, so I lived with two cultures, and I
Mhm.
really relate to like my figure out once I did not know my grandparents. Well, then, still have some contact with them. So how do you manage, like, I guess, code switching, the differences, the similarities,
Yeah, code switching between cultures is a major thing, I think. Especially when you're a diaspora child, whichever diaspora you're from, that's going to be a major thing. And if you are coming from Africa or the Caribbean, you are code switching at least 3 ways. You're code switching from, from your parents' culture because they're insisting that you retain that culture, although they don't always insist that you retain the language. That's a major thing. And then also with whoever you're meeting at school, which is usually other children, if you're of African descent, but with different language, a different, might it be patois instead of a whole language. Then you're also with the English children, that's another one. Then of course, you're code switching with adults as well. And when you're a child, you do it almost naturally. You only really notice it when somebody tells you, usually your parents telling you, this is the one that counts. So I think children do it really naturally. And that's why in terms of, and parents either forget or whatever, that when their children are small, that they can imbibe different languages. It's not a big deal. It's not that they are not going to be able to speak English properly if they are also speaking their mother tongue. That's not the case. But for some reason, they think or they feel that it will, so they stop their children from speaking mother tongue so that they can just concentrate on English and learn to speak English really well because it's going to matter when they get a job, when they grow up. But it doesn't really matter. The more languages they can speak, the better, and the more than they speak when they're young, the better. And, and they do, if you allow them to do it. So I think the code switching is an interesting thing to talk about, and an interesting thing that happens. And I think the poor kids, as your children grow up, those things they're being forced into divisions rather than them growing into things naturally.
Can you talk
That's a good
about
question.
the code switching in the poems? Like, how do you then pull all of those together in the poems? I mean, we've read some of it, but what is that process like? Is
Ooh.
it seamless, or do you have to go back and be intentional about inserting mother tongue or...
A little bit of both, because some of it was seamless to me. Like, it wasn't until there was a class of students. I was one of the colleges in upstate New York, and my friend would be teaching some of my work. And when I went to go and speak to the students, they would ask me about the religious symbolism, religious things in my poems. And I'm thinking, what religion in my poems? I really didn't see it at all until they kind of brought it to my notice. And then it's a bit like the hair, I didn't notice until it was kind of brought to attention. With the language, because we weren't allowed to speak any of the languages when we were kids, because my mum spoke 2. She spoke Timini Mende. Well, she probably spoke 3. She spoke Timini Mende. She spoke Creole, because nearly everybody speaks out. And she spoke English, because she did go to a secondary school, a high school. There was a missionary school. So she spoke 4 languages. My dad spoke Creole and English. So for him, it was like, this is my house, so you will only speak what I speak. We didn't speak Timini or Mende. We didn't even really speak Creole. So for the Creole, I heard a lot of it, so I would understand it. So for the book, I wrote it. So one of the poems, one version is in English, another version is in Creole, and they're side by side. So I wrote it with what I thought it was, and then I had to give it to a friend to say, please go over it for me and see if I've done it correctly. I mean, the good thing about such languages, you kind of have different versions anyway. There's not necessarily a wrong version, but you just still have to be consistent with it. But I thought, that was okay, because I really wanted to have that Creole infusion in there, because that was real. There's no point me writing a poem with a narrative with my grandmother in standard English. She never spoke Neither of them ever spoke standard English. Well, one of them didn't speak English at all, and the other one only spoke Creole. So it wasn't natural for me to have written that. And I felt that considering what I was trying to write about them, the least I could do was try and do it in the way that they would speak. But it is challenging, but some of it does come together seamlessly. But yeah. And I like to try and be challenged with things like that. And I always encourage people, if they do have the opportunity to do that, they should. So I have started telling people when I judge prizes, I judge a lot of prizes, which I really enjoy because you kind of learn quite a lot. If people are using mother tongue and different languages in their poem, we're going to be higher up in my list, really, because I think that is important to do, that challenge. Yeah.
How many times you have been back to your motherland, and as a woman who is doing poetry, like how is that like each time you go back? Does it like has it evolved? Does it like feel different?
So how many times have I been back home? I've probably only been about 5 times, and part of that was because of what was going on in the country. There was civil war, so there was times you couldn't go back then, for example. And yeah, just different things were happening. But I think the last time I went was in 2023. And so, yeah, I do try and... There was at one stage in my life, I remember, and I was writing poetry in my head, and I wasn't writing down. And you always kind of think, when I get some time, I'm going to write it down. By the time you get that time, you've forgotten. So by this time, I was determined that I wasn't going to do that. And because I hadn't been back for a couple of years and I had a little bit more time, I still forgot to do all the writing down. I tried to remember a lot of it in my head, which I didn't. But there was a lot I wanted to write about because I could see changes I wanted to write about. And again, about not just the change it was for me, but the changes in the country. Because one of the things I'd noticed, even though the war now has been over for a while, the people, I feel I notice a change in the people. People always would talk about Sierra Leone people being really gentle and laid back and this and the other. And I went this time, I think, where's that gentleness gone? It wasn't there. And, so when you're getting on like what we call them podder, like minibuses that are transport, when you're getting on those and there's not enough seats, you've got to fight to get on. So me, being me from England, I'm not going to fight a grandmother to get on the bus. Well, if you don't fight the grandmother, you're not going to get on the bus. Right? So it had nothing to do with age or anything. When you're younger with your elders, it's like, yes, your elders go first, but this has changed. Things had changed like that. There was like an aggressiveness in people that hadn't been there before. So those things, especially maybe if you're coming from outside and maybe if you're a poet, you kind of notice those things and you think, this is something that's going to feed in my poetry. So I might not want to write aggressive Sierra Leoneans or anything like that, but it's something that's happened, a change has happened that you do want to incorporate in your writing. Just things like that happen. And yeah, so there's definitely things of notice, things have changed that you want to write about. I never really travelled up country outside of Freetown enough. And that's something I still want to travel, do even more. But every time I go back, I feel like, okay, I have a great time for about 10 days. And I'm really infuriated about things that are happening in the country. I think maybe I better leave, because if I say anything and I open my mouth, I'm going to get into trouble. I'm not going anywhere. So maybe I should just go, because things do frustrate you. You want to make change yourself. And when you go back, like in the poem, No Plans to Return. And a lot of times people don't want to return because there's still no electricity. Ever since I've been, the first time I went was when I was 11. They had electricity. When I went after that, the electricity went on and off. And people would go for days without electricity. That means, that's so important. You can't fill up your freezer with food because the electricity is going to go off unless you've got a generator. So if like 30, 40, 50 years later, there's still no electricity, that's really frustrating. The people who are there maybe are getting used to it, but they're still frustrated by it, but they manage it. When you're going and you're going home and you want to have fun, it's really frustrating. But then there's this thing that is now building up in terms of diaspora children, particularly, and they're going home and having fun at Christmas. And it's almost like a whole different tourism sector that is building up of young Africans going home, particularly in December around Christmas time, and having the most amount of fun that they do not have when they are in the UK and the US. So that's another thing that's been building and been exploding. That's another major change, because now they are wealthy enough to do that. But, you know, that's also then you have to look at what's happening with the people at home who are seeing this, who are seeing all these young people coming home with all this money, and all of a sudden, whatever they want to buy goes up in price. It's like, yeah, it goes up in price just because of these young people coming back, inflating prices. That must be frustrating from them. So again, there's that whole change around the economy and everything that, again, is going to create more stories and more. But you have to be open to it. It's not just me like going home, having a lot of fun and leaving. What are the changes that are happening? And that's what you kind of got to take on board and maybe write about and see how it's affecting everybody and the world.
I think we have time for one more question, but I thought I maybe saw some hands, but if not, you said.
Oh, I was just checking.
Oh, sorry. Yes, my phone died. It drained the battery very quickly. It didn't make it through the whole reading, so everyone got to see your reading. But I do have a few announcements. But before I make those announcements, can we please give one more round of applause for that?
Thank you. Thank you very much for coming. Thank you for listening. Had a great time. Thank you. And thank you, Furious Flower, for inviting me and organising this. I feel really honoured for it. And so when I'm sending all people all these things online, they're going, oh my gosh, isn't Kadija amazing? And I'm just going, yes. The poster, it's great. Yeah, thank you. Yeah, so I've had so much fun. Thank you, I really enjoyed it. Thank you.